We continue with Living with Leviathan, and I gave you an introduction perhaps over a week ago, and in conjunction with my other video series on Return to Florida, which is on very much a positive theme, that is, melodies of memories. This is again described as the darker side. This is dealing with the law, with the state, and what I generally call or refer to in a sort of fictional way as the Leviathan. I don't believe that I'm too far off by using such a metaphor, and certainly it has reference to the Bible, the book of Revelation, the book of Job, and also, as I think I referred to in a citation, some of the works on economics and policy from a writer by the name of Robert Higgs. Well, let me continue with a different writer of a much different era, a man by the name of Friedrich Bastiat, if I pronounce that correctly. He wrote, I write, surely he was right when he described the law as a potential instrument of plunder. He stated that if you make of the law an instrument of plunder for the benefit of particular individuals or classes, first everyone will try to make the law, then everyone will try to make it for his own profit, resulting in the end of all morality. Bastiat foresaw that in his words government will be held responsible for everyone's existence and will bend under the weight of that responsibility. Now, he was clearly a wise person by way of this insight. It could have very well been that this was in part the result of his own experience, but certainly he seems to be, as the British might say, spot on with what seems to be occurring in our own economy and as well perhaps on a global scale with regard to the fundamental faltering of manhood, or humanity, by way of greed, and again wielding the law, fashioning or fabricating the law to one's personal or own benefit and profit, resulting again in the end of all morality. Now this I intentionally used out of context, that is, not dealing strictly with economics or economics at all, but rather dealing instead with another shared behavior, and that is, or development, and that is where one uses or abuses the law for their own personal gain. And again, abuse is very appropriately assigned here as the form of behavior or the conduct. Living with Leviathan, the Conundrum Conviction. Now this is a letter that I wrote to my employer, or an email, which I had to provide to them by way of my probation obligation. That is, I have to inform my employer of my being on criminal probation. Now, what's a conundrum? A conundrum is something which is unsolvable, perhaps through reason cannot be solved, or through practical or some kind of rational thinking cannot be necessarily solved. And here we have the conundrum whereby I was never convicted as a felon, and yet I'm being punished severely. 5 years of probation, and an enormous financial cost and burden to myself and indirectly to my own children for their care and for their financing and provision. And so the cost has been enormous. The destruction has been very, very deep, and also very, in some ways, devastating. And yet it goes on, and it continues because of a court system which has not only been tolerant, but has enabled this kind of conduct and behavior. But here goes my email as I formed it and presented it. I am obligated to inform you that I am currently on criminal probation. This case pertains to my children from a former marriage, and in essence involves my attempt to right them in violation of an injunction prohibiting our association. It is complicated, but so that you are aware, my probation officer will be contacting you to confirm my employment. As a post note, I was never found guilty of the charge. However, I pled no contest in order to avoid further implication by my children. We, they and I, had no mutual communication in about 10 years, have had none, or 8 years at that time. The probation resulted from my plea, though I was not fully aware at the time of the consequences or conditions in this choice. If you need additional information, I will be glad to share that with you. Further, I will put you in touch with my initial probation officer, who has a history of my case. And obviously, I've left out or left a placehold for those specific names and locations and other detailed information. But certainly from this you get the essence of what I had to do and some of what I am facing in the way of what I call conviction conundrum. I hope you've enjoyed in some way, or at least been informed with regard to this first or second in the series of Living with Leviathan, and I look forward to sharing with you other developments as they occur, so that you can understand, perhaps, and grow in wisdom, just as Mr. Friedrich Bastiat evidently did, in regard to your own observations and what you see that takes place, even though it may be painful to you or indirectly painful, and yet these kinds of lessons, hard though they be, sometimes impossible, are very necessary and unfortunately unavoidable, often, or many times in our lifetime.